Chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk, representative Baeth, for opening remarks, Amendment H 1215.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hello, my friends. This amendment focuses on the children of Iowa by adding a reporting requirement to Section 10 of this bill. I'll remind you folks, Section 10 is the part of the bill that requires DHHS to annually report the number of cases reviewed, the number of fraud investigations, and the amount of savings and cost avoidance as a result of this proposed law. Now, by the way, savings and cost avoidance, once again, is code for people denied food and health insurance. So this amendment would add the requirement for DHHS to report the number of children who are denied food and health insurance. Number of children. Well, why is that number so important? Well, most economists would tell you that one of the greatest determinants of the poverty level in a society is the way that society takes care of its children. Why is that? Well, it's because there's this thing called the cycle of poverty, or intergenerational poverty, where typically one generation and the next and then the next remains poor. Because for all the reasons that were described previously by my colleagues, it's tough to get out of poverty. There's all sorts of pits of despair. And what's needed is a ladder out of poverty. Sometimes that comes in the form of education. Sometimes that comes in the form of a child finding a mentor. Sometimes it just comes out of good luck. Well, we know that when a society supports its children, it's offering ladders out of poverty. The data show that the cycle of poverty is very real. There was a study, I was just looking it up. This is from the National Center for Children of Poverty. This looked at children born between 1970 and 1990, and then looked at them later in their adult years, and you could predict whether or not they were poor at that adult age based on how much of their youth they spent in poverty. So as an example, among 35-year-olds, if you spent no time poor in your youth, you had less than a 1% chance of being poor when you're 35. If you spent half or more of your childhood poor, you had over a 45% chance of being poor still when you're 35. And guess what? Those poor 35-year-olds then have poor children, and the cycle continues. That's why it matters for us to keep track of how many children we are pulling away the ladders from, because that's going to determine how much poverty remains in our state. You know, these are, after all, just kids. You know, nerdy poverty ladders and all that aside, these are just kids, guys. Babies, toddlers like my children, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds, kids who can't get a job to buy food or buy health insurance, kids who shouldn't get a job anyway, who should be focusing on getting an education and preparing themselves for a self-sufficient adulthood. These kids shouldn't have to worry whether their parents adhered to a 10-day deadline to complete paperwork. They shouldn't have to worry about whether a new computer system found discrepancies. These kids just need to eat, or maybe go to the doctor when they need to. They're kids. Imagine you as a child. My kid, he either wants to be a doctor or Spider-Man or an astronaut, I don't know, but he's got dreams, as do all of our children. as do all of our children have dreams. And if America is the place where you can realize your dream, then let's make that possible for everyone. We have the resources to do it. When our state leaders boast about the strong financial position of this state, and we still have 1 in 10 people who don't know where the next meal is coming from, we still have children who are hungry, and we're pulling even more resources away from them, shame on this body if that's the outcome. So, if you think I'm wrong, and if you don't believe, if you're confident, 100% confident, that this bill is not going to deprive children of food or health care, you should vote for this amendment and prove me wrong. Show me the numbers, prove that I'm wrong. If, however, you're not 100% confident that this bill is infallible, you've got maybe some humility, maybe just a little bit of worry that we might be depriving hungry children of a future, maybe you should also vote for this amendment so that we might detect the errors of our ways and fix it in the future. But, however, if you don't believe you're capable of making a mistake or don't care, go ahead and vote no. But if you care about children who are the future of Iowa, at the very least, let's make sure we're not letting them down. And with that, I ask that you support this amendment.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Clark, Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Baeth, for your amendment. Again, as I've stated before, eligibility is based off of household as well as our reporting. For those reasons, I would ask for a no vote on the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Polk for closing remarks, Amendment H1215.
There are going to be kids who lose out on this. And we can either ignore it, ignore letting children down, or you can figure out what this does to the future of our state so we might be able to fix it in the future. For that reason, please support this.
The gentleman from Polk moves Amendment H1215. Division of records has been requested by Lady from Polk, Representative Confer, second by Lady from Polk, Representative Madsen. This is now a record roll call vote. The clerk will machine receive your vote. Jacoby votes aye. Jones votes no. Have you all now voted? Clerk close the machine. The House pay attention to the results of the vote. Those voting aye, 36. Those voting no, 61. Abstain, not voting 3. The amendment has failed. Will the clerk call up the next amendment?
H1226 by Forbes of